Dawn faded into a scorched sky, as if someone had built a bonfire over the horizon. Cicadas squeaked over the plain, dense as dust. A dog, thin, with a broken ear and a scar on his side, was cowering by a dried-up stream. He was digging in the sand, jumping up and down, then burying his muzzle in the ground again. Suddenly, there was a squeak, a thin, painful, almost inaudible squeak. The dog jumped back, sniffed, slowly, carefully, step by step, approached the uneven hillock. He disturbed the edge with his paw and pulled a flap of cloth out of the sand. Underneath was a hand, a woman's, bloody but clutching the edge of the blanket as if someone had tried to cover her but changed his mind. He pulled at the hem with his teeth and the fabric slid off his face. A woman, young, half-naked, in a dirty combination. Lips chapped, skin scarred with scratches, a black crust of blood on her side. She was still alive, barely. Her eyes were slightly open, pale, hazy. Her lips moved.
Don't let him find me.
The stomp of horses' hooves echoed across the plain. The dog growled and turned, but did not run away. A rider appeared on the hill, against the pale sky. He was tall and thin, wearing a dark hat and a shabby coat, and he held the reins with one hand. The horse snorted, shook its head in displeasure. The rider looked down, at the dog, at the woman, at the bloody blanket. He took his time. Slowly he slid from the saddle, walked over, crouched beside her, silently placed 2 fingers on her neck. Her pulse was barely perceptible, like a whiff. The dog didn't growl at him. He growled into the void, into the place where something terrible began, something that was gone but not yet forgotten. The man, Elijah, looked up. The plain was empty, but he knew. Emptiness was rarely real.
There are rules on the frontier. Either you die or you pretend you don't care. I pretended for a long time.
The cart creaked, as if complaining over every stone. The dog walked beside it, shaking the dust from his ears, glancing now and then at the road, then at the woman covered in the cart with an old blanket. She did not move. Even the wind seemed to lull as she was driven away from the river, away from the blood and other people's footprints. Elijah sat, gripping the reins as one holds not the reins, but the crux of the matter. There was no fear or pity in his face, only caution. He wasn't used to taking home strangers, especially ones that appeared out of the ground like ghosts. But the woman was not dead, and so she was already something of a liability. The farm met them with silence and the rustling of grasses that survived in the cracks of dust. The house stood askew, the porch skewed to the south, the barn long ago begging to go into the ground, but the roof held, and that was what mattered. He carried her inside, laid her on the bed, cleaned her wound. The blood on her side was already caked, but the smell told him she wouldn't last much longer. She woke up as he was wringing out a rag.
"Where am I?"
she asked hoarsely.
Safe,
He answered.
"I don't know who you are."
Elijah.
She squinted, as if trying to push that name through the fog in her head.
And you are?
He asked. A pause. Then,
"I don't remember."
he said nothing, but his gaze grew heavy. Later, when she was asleep, Elijah went out onto the porch, sat down, took out his knife and sharpening stone. The dog lay down beside him, resting his muzzle on his paws. He got up, went back into the house, found her dress, still damp. Rummaging through the folds, he found the ring. Simple, gold, engraved inside, RW-1888. He looked at it for a long time, then at her. In the morning she was sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket, a bowl of broth in her hands. The spoon trembled, but she tried not to spill it.
"Thank you."
She said quietly.
You're welcome.
"Did you find something with me?"
He hesitated.
A ring. With initials. Are you married?
She froze. Put the spoon down.
"I don't know. Maybe I really don't remember.
He sat down across from her.
And the bullet?
He asked softly.
What?
The shot was at close range. About 20 centimeters, no more. Who shoots like that? At you? Or you?
Her eyes blurred. First fear, then suddenly a flash of something else. Anger? Guilt?
Minus I don't know.
She whispered.
You sure you don't know? Or you don't want to say?
She turned away to the window. She said nothing more. By evening, Elijah was sitting on the porch again, a flask of whiskey in his hand. The dog at the barn was sniffing around. Then he barked, sharp, insistent. Elijah stood up, picked up his gun. The dog led him to the back wall of the barn, where the dust was slightly loosened. One trail, shallow but fresh. Someone had been here recently. He stared into the emptiness, then shifted his gaze to the house. His heart clenched. The woman hadn't slept the night before. She lay with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling.
He'll find me.
She whispered into the darkness.
He always does.
Elijah stood outside the door, in the shadows, listening. He knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back. The sun rose slowly that day, as if in no hurry to see what was to come. The woman woke up first. She was already sitting on the porch, wrapped in an old blanket, when Elijah came out of the house. He wasn't surprised.
You look a little more alive,
He remarked. She nodded. Then she asked,
How long have I been here?
2 days.
And all that time, you haven't said a word?
I'm not one to talk much.
What if I told you what I remember?
He raised an eyebrow.
A name. It came to mind. Mary. Harper, I think.
Elijah didn't say anything. He just tilted his head slightly.
Did you seem to remember the last name too?
She turned away. The morning wind ruffled her hair, tangled and burned. Her face was quiet, but not blank. Too realized for someone with no past. They were cutting wood when they heard the clatter of hooves. 2 horsemen. One was a deputy, the other Sheriff Clayton himself, a stout old man with a face like carved bark.
Elijah,
He nodded.
Sheriff.
He glanced at the woman. She was standing in the doorway, froze as soon as she saw him. The sheriff froze too. His eyes narrowed.
Jesus,
He whispered.
Mrs. Wyndham,
Elijah frowned.
Who?
Ruth Wyndham, the wife of the banker from Santa Maria. She went missing 3 weeks ago. We've been looking for her with people.
The woman turned pale. She staggered.
No,
You've been identified, ma'am.
The sheriff said firmly.
Your husband put up the reward. We thought you'd been dead a long time.
Elijah looked at her. She shook her head slowly, like a child caught in a lie.
I'm not Ruth.
She mumbled.
I'm Mary. Yeah.
The sheriff stepped closer.
Listen, boy, you're a good man for taking her in, but she's under the protection of the law now. She needs to be returned.
She's hurt. She's delirious. She's delirious.
Elijah said quietly.
Maybe. Maybe she's faking it.
I'm not giving her up. Not until I figure it out.
The sheriff stared for a long moment. Then he sighed.
Then I'll be back with a warrant.
He left, and with him, silence. The woman sat on the steps with her knees pressed to her chest.
I didn't know.
She whispered.
I didn't remember.
And now you remember?
Elijah asked. She was silent for a long moment. Then she whispered,
I'm not Ruth. I don't want to be Ruth.
He didn't answer. He just went into the house. At night, he sat by the lamp, the ring in front of him. RW 1888. He checked her. IDA wallet hidden in her cloak. Inside, a withered flower, nothing more. She lied. Or had she? The dog growled. He's up.
What?
Footsteps. Elijah stepped out. A man in a black trench coat stood on the porch. City type, with a cane and a smirk.
Elijah Gray, huh?
Cold.
Who are you?
James Crawford, private investigator, hired by Mr. Wyndham.
He nodded at the house.
Inside is a woman half the state's looking for, and who, for some reason, you're in no hurry to give up.
She's not a criminal.
Don't jump to conclusions. I've heard the stories. She didn't just run away. She knew where she was going. She wasn't hiding out of fear. She was hiding from punishment.
No more riddles.
Crawford grinned.
If you really think she's a victim, then you're no better than the men who beat her. She's dangerous, Mr. Gray.
He turned and walked off into the night, dissolving into dust. The woman stood in the window. Elijah knew she heard every word. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't find the words. She looked at her reflection in the pitcher of water. There was the face of a woman she didn't know, pale, bruised, with eyes that hid pain, or guilt, or both. Elijah stood at the door, watching in silence.
You're right.
She said quietly.
I lied.
About the name?
About everything.
She sat up. She moved carefully, not out of weakness, but out of fear, as if any sudden movement might reawaken the nightmare from which she had come.
My name is Ruth.
She began.
Ruth Wyndham. My husband is Josiah Wyndham, a banker. He owns half of Santa Maria, and he thinks the other half is rightfully owed to him.
Elijah sat across from me, didn't interrupt.
We didn't marry for love. I was given to him like a beautiful thing, like a rare jewelry box. He kept me in the house like a museum piece. No say. No way out. I was beautiful. That meant I belonged to him. That's what he thought.
Did you try to leave?
Not at first. At first, I believed things would change. Then I was afraid. He didn't raise his hand often, but when he did it thoroughly. And he always said, "No one will ever know, because no one will hear you."
She wrapped her arms around herself as if cold.
I saw him kill a man once, just for no reason, a laborer, because he asked for a raise. He said, "That was a lesson." And then he made me watch the body being dragged away.
Elijah clenched his fist tighter.
That's when I made up my mind. Leave or die.
And then?
She looked up at him, not a single tear in his eyes, just the dry truth.
I found a man. His name was Tokala. He worked in the stables, half breed, half Lakota. He knew how to hide, knew how to get away without a trace. We started talking, then we started writing. I hid the letters. We planned an escape.
Pause. She's breathing hard.
The day we were going to leave, things went wrong. Someone gave us away. One of the servants, for money, I think. They were waiting for me. One of them fired a shot. I woke up in a brothel in Dalton. They didn't finish me off, just resold me. Like a piece of property.
Elijah got up, walked around. He was counting something inside him. The questions were multiplying.
And Tokala?
I don't know. They said he escaped. Or he was killed. I ran at night, in my shirt. 3 days in the bushes, eating bark and dirt. Then the dog found me.
Silence. Only the clanging of the clock in the kitchen. The woman looks at her hands as if they were strangers.
That's the whole story.
She says.
I wanted to escape from evil. It turned out to be an escape to another.
Later. On the veranda. The dust is rising. Someone's coming. Not the sheriff. A man with a cylinder, black coat, town manners. Crawford. An investigator. He takes his time getting off his horse. Elijah meets him silently.
I warned you she wasn't what she seemed.
Crawford says.
But I guess you prefer to believe your eyes rather than the facts.
He pulls a folder from his inside pocket, tosses it on the table.
Here are the letters. She wrote them to Tokala, some with plans, others with revelations. There are words that leave no doubt. She wasn't just running away. She was part of a conspiracy. The banker was supposed to be dead. He's still alive. Because she didn't have the guts, or because someone missed.
Crawford looks at Elijah point blank.
You think she's a victim, but maybe she's a killer, or an almost killer. Is there a difference?
There is.
Elijah's voice is firm.
She's a person, not a trophy, not a thing.
And who are you in this story? A savior, or just the next fool she leads away?
The investigator walks away, leaving behind a dusty road and words that cut like a knife. At night, Ruth stands on the porch. The wind plays with the hem of her dress. Her face is like stone. Elijah walks out to her.
Why didn't you tell me this in the first place?
Because I didn't know who I could tell. And then I was afraid you'd leave.
He stares into the darkness.
I didn't.
She turns to him.
Tokala, if he's alive, he'll come. He won't leave me. He knew what he was doing.
Did you?
I still don't know who I am, a victim, an accomplice, wife, prisoner.
He's silent for a long time. Then he asks.
Did you ever love him?
She doesn't answer, but in his eyes, yes. The next morning, someone burned down the barn, and in the ashes they found an inscription scratched in charcoal on the wall. You won't escape twice. It rained first. Not hard, not thunderous, quiet, lingering, as if the sky had decided to cry for everyone at once. The dust on the road turned to mush. Droplets drummed on the roof like the timed beats of fate. Elijah stood at the window, staring out at the black mass of clouds as if trying to find an answer there. There was silence in the back. Ruth lay on the bed, huddled together. The smoke from the burned barn still lingered in the air, soaked into his clothes, into the walls, into his skin. He felt that time was short. Very little time. On the third day after the fire, he found a letter in her things. Between the pages of a Bible, old, crumpled paper, written in a woman's hand.
You think I don't know you're with him? Do you think he'll love you more than he loves me? You're just like everyone else. I'll see you rot. I'll make it happen.
Signed, E. He stared at the letter for a long moment. His fingers trembled.
There's something you haven't told me,
he said, coming into the room. Ruth raised her head. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife. He threw the letter on the table.
Who is she?
She did not answer at once. Then she sat up, ran her palm over her face.
Elena, the maid, lived in the house since she was a child. She was obsessed with Josiah, believed he would marry her, but he chose me for the money, beauty, appearance.
Was she an enemy to you?
At first, just angry. Then she made threats. She ruined food. She left footprints. I felt she was waiting for me to fail. When I started writing to Tokala, I don't know how, but she found out.
Could she have told your husband?
Ruth was silent. Then she nodded.
She hated me more than she loved him. I think she ratted us out.
Elijah stepped closer.
If that's true, she could be here, not far away.
Or already inside.
Ruth whispered.
She knew how to be invisible.
The rain continued. The house creaked with moisture. The dog paced nervously in circles, staying away from the door. And that same evening, Crawford returned. Not alone this time. Behind him, 3 men, in trench coats with Winchesters.
We thought we'd call it a night,
said the coroner.
Wyndham has filed a petition for forcible return of his wife. The law's on his side. I'm here on behalf of the state court.
Elijah stared in silence.
Are you going to take her by force?
Only if you keep being an idiot.
He threw a folded sheet, a copy of the ruling, to the ground. Elijah didn't pick it up.
Leave before it's too late.
Are you making threats?
I'm telling the truth.
Crawford grinned.
Do you know what you are, Elijah? A veteran with a charred heart. You want to save someone because you failed once, and now you're projecting. She knows that, and she's playing on it.
He came closer, almost at point-blank range.
You got a bullet in your side, number broken past? Yes, so you're vulnerable, and she's manipulative.
Elijah wanted to hit, but he didn't. Crawford whispered,
By the way, you know her lover's alive? He's around here somewhere. I heard. So it's only a matter of time before she gets fed up with one of you first.
During the night, the rain intensified. Ruth was awake. Elijah sat on the floor by the fireplace. Both were silent. The night was taut as a string, and at one point she spoke.
I don't know who I am, Elijah. I really don't. I'm trying to remember myself to everything. To the pain, to the Tokala, to Josiah. But it's empty.
He turned around.
I saw the letter. I heard the investigator. He says you were part of the conspiracy.
She nodded.
She was.
So you tried to kill your husband?
I wanted him gone. I knew I couldn't leave if I didn't. Tokala and I made a plan, but I didn't pull the trigger. All I had to do was walk away. The rest was none of my business.
But he's alive.
Because the plan failed. Because someone changed everything.
Elijah stared into the fire.
Then tell me, if it had worked out, would you have regretted it?
Non bother.
Pause. Her voice grew quieter.
I would have regretted it if I'd stayed.
Toward morning, the dog growled again. A shadow flickered in the backyard. Then there was a knock on the window. Once, and again. Elijah came out with a Winchester. A man in a trench coat stood on the porch. He was covered in mud, like he'd been walking through a swamp. He raised his hands.
Don't shoot. I've come for her.
Ruth ran out of the house. She froze.
Tokala.
He stood silent, his face, the scar on his cheek, eyes burning like an animal that survived a forest fire.
I didn't know if you were alive. I followed the trail, killed those who got in the way. And now, I'm here.
Elijah stared at them.
And now what?
He asked quietly. Ruth stepped toward him.
I don't know, but if they come, we'll be together.
We?
He asked again. She looked into his eyes, and this time she didn't look away.
I don't want to be anyone else's, not his, not even yours. But if you stand by me, I won't run.
And that's when Elijah knew the choice was close. And the rain continued to fall. Figures appeared on the horizon. Men in cloaks. Horsemen. They were following the trail. And one of them carried a torch. The night dissolved into a wet rustle. The clouds hung heavy over the earth. The rain had not stopped, but it was quieter, as if the storm itself had frozen before it struck. The house smelled of damp, blood, and old smoke. Tokala sat by the stove, sharpening his knife. Silently. Elijah poured coffee. Slowly. Shadows walked along the walls. Ruth stood between them, like a bridge over an abyss. She stared out the window without turning around. Then she spoke.
I want to tell you everything, Elijah. Not because you ask me to, but because I can't not tell you anymore.
Elijah nodded without looking. Tokala continued to sharpen his knife. The point was like a mirror.
After the escape, after everything went wrong, I thought I was going to die. When they dragged me to that brothel, I didn't have a name. I was 9. Just a number. I was beaten, fed dirt, sold every day. And nobody helped me. No one heard.
She swallowed, but continued.
And then, one woman, an old Indian woman, didn't speak English. She brought me a piece of bread one day. She just put it down and walked away. And that's when I realized, I don't want to die. Not from a bullet, not from pain. I want to choose for myself how my story ends.
Elijah took his eyes off the cup.
I escaped after a week, killed one of the guards with a cigar cutter, just stabbed him in the throat. I don't remember how. Everything was red. Then the running. nights, a week. And the river. That's where I fell. That's where you found me.
She was silent. The rain tapped on the roof like a silent witness.
When you said you wouldn't turn me in, I didn't believe you. I thought you were like everyone else. Use it and throw it away. And then you gave me a name, a warmth, a home. I didn't ask. I believed you.
Tokala looked up. He spoke for the first time all night.
Do you love him?
Ruth turned to him. There was no guilt on her face, no confusion, only heaviness.
I love the way he looks at me. No fear, no desire to break. I don't know if it's love, but it's freedom.
Tokala stood up. He came closer. There was silence between them.
I walked to you for a month. Through forests, through patrols. I thought you were dead. Every step was like a knife on my skin. I didn't come for forgiveness. I came to stand between you and hell.
Elijah stood up.
And now what?
Tokala looked him in the eye.
Now you have to understand. We can't stay. Not here. Not with Wyndham at our backs. He'll burn this land to get her back.
She's pregnant.
Elijah said quietly. Tokala blinked. Ruth lowered her head. The silence was as heavy as concrete.
By whom?
Tokala asked. She didn't answer at once, then muffled.
From you.
The air froze. Elijah looked away.
I knew,
He said.
from the day you fainted by the hearth. I saw you holding your stomach.
Why didn't you say anything?
She whispered.
Because it doesn't change anything. You're the person I wanted to save. Not to keep, not to take away. Just to save.
Tokala approached Elijah. He spoke harshly, but without malice.
Thank you for saving her. But now she must come with me.
It's her choice.
They both turned to Ruth, and she stood between them, alone, all in the grey dawn, in the glimmer of light from the window, the silhouette of a woman who had survived death.
I'll go.
She said.
But not for you. For the child. For myself. So that child doesn't grow up in fear, doesn't hear me crying at night because I couldn't leave then.
Elijah walked over to her, took her hand, gently, without the right to hold it.
I knew you'd leave one day. But I didn't want you to go in a coffin. I wanted you to walk away on your own feet, with your head up.
She looked at him. There was everything in her gaze. Forgiveness, gratitude, pain, and what would remain between them forever.
You don't have to believe me.
She said.
But I believed you.
A shot rang out in the distance. One, then two more. It echoed across the slopes, across the wet rocks, across the sky. Elijah stepped out onto the porch, looked out into the distance. Riders on the crest of the hill, with guns, Wyndham's men. He went back inside.
They're coming.
Tokala checked his knife, drew his rifle. Ruth nodded silently. Elijah pulled an old Spencer from under the floor, loaded it.
We don't have much time,
He said.
but I'll do what I can to make sure you get away.
Will you come with us?
Ruth asked. He shook his head.
Nonbada, my fight is here. My sin is here too.
She walked over, kissed him on the cheek. No words, no promises. It's dawn on the doorstep. The first ray of light breaks through the clouds. 3 figures against the grey sky. The woman, the warrior, and the one who had pretended for too long not to care. And all 3 knew the next chapter would be bloody. They came at dawn, 6 horsemen, cloaked, black-hatted, carrying Winchesters and shotguns. Behind, a wagon covered with a tarpaulin, and in front was Crawford, with an eye patch and a grin that not even the rain could erase. Elijah stood on the veranda, an old Spencer in his hands. The dry click of the bolt was louder than any scream.
Last chance!
Crawford shouted.
Give it up, or bury your pride along with the house.
Tokala looked out the window. His bow was drawn like a breath before a shot. Ruth stood in the shadows. In one hand a revolver, In the other, the pendant that had hung around her neck since the beginning. She watched the past go to kill her present.
Let's leave through the cellar.
Elijah said quietly.
There's an old tunnel behind. It leads to the creek. It's 1/2 mile to the crevasse. From there, you're in the woods.
And you?
Ruth asked.
I'm here.
I don't want...
She began, but he interrupted.
You've survived once before. You're not alone now. Go.
The first shots rang out as they opened the cellar door. The bullet shattered the glass, hit the cupboard. The dog howled and rushed down the stairs first. Tokala took Ruth's hand. They ran on. The clay passage was low, wet. Muffled thumps were heard from above. Footsteps, gunfire, swearing. On the veranda, Elijah fired slowly, aiming. One in the shoulder, a second in the chest. A third fell from his horse, reaching for his gun. Elijah finished him from his knee. Crawford took cover behind the cart.
He's alone, you idiots! Alone!
He yelled.
Burn it all to hell!
One of the bandits ran up to the wall of the house with a torch. The burning rag in his hand shook in the wind. He threw it at the roof. There was a dry crackle. Fire went up through the beams. Ruth and Tokala burst out of the cellar, made their way toward the woods. Ahead of them, the creek. Behind them, the screams, the gunfire, the roar of the fire.
He's going to die.
She said.
He chose this.
Tokala replied.
We can't save everyone.
But he saved me.
Then let his sacrifice have meaning. Live.
The house was on fire. A beam collapsed at the entrance. Elijah retreated inside. His head was ringing, eyes filled with smoke, ashes in his throat. He reloaded his rifle. Crawford was the last to enter, face black with soot.
All right, hero. Have you had your fun?
Elijah raised his weapon.
You don't know what it means to believe in someone because you're just a dog on a rich man's chain.
And you're a veteran with hero syndrome.
They both fired almost simultaneously. Crawford's bullet went off on a tangent. Elijah's bullet hit him in the stomach. The coroner bent over. He fell. He wheezed.
She's pregnant,
Elijah said.
Would you kill the baby?
Crawford spit up blood.
I saw what she was doing. I saw it. People died. For her.
Nonbede. For themselves. Because no one gave her a choice.
Did you?
Elijah looked at the revolver he held in his hand. The flames were close. The beams were collapsing. The ceiling was crackling. He walked over to Crawford.
I gave her the way.
The house collapsed in 7 minutes. From up the hill, from behind the woods, the sheriff and his men saw only a column of smoke. One shot, then silence. They got there too late. They found the charred bodies of 3 of the bandits in the rubble. Crawford's body with a gun in his hand. Elijah was never found. That same day, near the reservation boundary, a woman and a man in leather cloaks stopped by a creek.
It's safe from here.
He said.
Are you sure?
If I weren't, I wouldn't have brought you here.
She squatted down. She released the pendant into the water. It sank instantly, as if it wanted to disappear.
I'll never forget him.
You don't have to.
Ruth put her hand on her stomach. Tokala looked toward the sun. It was rising. A new one. Time passed. The earth was covered in ash, but gave new grass. People forgot the names of those who once disappeared in flames and blood. Only the wind remembered the names. At the entrance to the city, the herd reappeared. Dust. Wagon wheels. The man in the hat asked the blacksmith,
Is it true that there was a man somewhere around here who hid a woman from Wyndham himself?
The blacksmith shrugged his shoulders.
There's a lot of bikes going around. Some say he saved her. Others say she killed him. And some say he never existed at all. Only the dog remains, sitting by the hill where the house used to be.
The man nodded and left. In the south, across the state line, on the reservation, a redwood house stood at the very edge of a cliff. where eagles flew low and the land knew pain. Ruth stood at the window. In her arms, a baby, a boy, dark hair like hers, eyes like Tokala's.
He's up at night again.
Tokala said as he came in.
Like you.
Dreams. Still.
Ruth turned around. There was tenderness and worry on his face. She sighed.
Do you think he would have been happy knowing we were alive?
He knew. He gave it to us. Believed when we didn't believe anymore.
She held the baby to her chest.
Sometimes I think I can hear him talking, his voice, like he's still around.
In the north, among the dry hills, a dog sat by a lonely tree, old, with a grey face and a wounded ear. He was looking away, as if waiting for someone. Children passing by asked,
"Whose dog is that?"
They'd say,
"He lived with a man who once became a hero. Not for fame. He lived with a woman.
"Did he die?"
We don't know. Maybe he became a wind, or maybe he just left."
There are rules on the frontier. Either you die or you pretend you don't care. I pretended for a long time. Then I met her. She was no saint, not a victim, not a monster. She was just alive, real, and that was enough. I don't know who she really was, and maybe she didn't fully know. But for the first time in a long time, I cared. And sometimes, that's enough to be human.
Evening. Sunset paints the sky rust-colored. The dog rises. He looks at the road. The saddle creaks. A rider rides past, in the distance. A lone silhouette. He doesn't turn around. The dust rises. The sun sinks below the horizon. The dog follows, slowly, confident, as if he knew the journey wasn't over.